Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fan engagement online versus offline discussion. We've got a really interesting mixture of clubs, federations, and sponsors here to talk through this. And it says online versus offline, but it's really how quickly online is taking over from offline. So obviously top clubs across Europe are facing pressure to grow their international fan base, and this has led to many to prioritise digital channels when engaging with fans. So we'll look into this and how it impacts traditional offline methods such as pre-season tours and international academies, and how digital can supplant physical activity. So introducing, we've got Igor from Zenit, Kishi from Valencia, we've got Felipe from NOS, which is Portugal's biggest entertainment and communication company. We've got Gonzalo from SC Braga, and right down on the end we've got Russell from EFL. So I guess we'll start with you, Igor. Why don't you talk us through you've got a brand new stadium for the World Cup, which is pretty state of the art. Do you want to talk about how you're using that to engage the fans?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me and all of us here. It's been a long trip, and I really enjoy the weather. I would say that the new stadium has certainly been a challenge, just because looking at capacity of it, we had to move from the old Petrovsky Stadium that some of you have maybe seen during the rare Champions League broadcasts, which had 19,000 seats, to the new one, which is over 60,000, which meant that we somehow had to find 40,000 new people that would want to go to the stadium. But first of all, our engineers and constructors, they really helped us, because taking that St. Petersburg, as we call, is a gate to the north. I would say the weather there is not as enjoyable as it is here. And sometimes we had Champions League matches at the temperature of minus 18 Celsius. Rather than now, we have a retractable roof and a pitch that can move in and out, which allows us to maintain the temperature of plus 17 degrees no matter what. So by definition, that attracted some fans, but that only worked at the very beginning, because we noticed that the retention rate of those who came to the stadium for the first 10 to 15 matches has been like 80% or something. People kept coming for the first time just to witness that facility itself. Then it lowered, and we told them that this is a new experience, unlike the one that we had to offer them before. But another challenge, and it all started with a small thing. We noticed that at the old ground, because it was a small one, people kept coming like 15 minutes prior to kickoff, because there were no security gates, no nothing, like smaller ones. And they started to do the same thing at the new ground, which is, 10 times bigger physically. So we had long queues. We had everyone at the stands by the end of the first half. So we started this campaign, talking about offline and online together, which had a basic message: come earlier. But in order to attract people to come early, we had to offer them something. And we started to think like what sort of experiences we can create for that, and we came up to an idea that we have to make a themed set of different entertainments, including foods, including artists, including everything. And it's themed by either the fact or some associations with our opponents. Let's say we play against Spartak, and I'm looking at my colleague from Braga, because I'm thankful for the fact that they kicked them out of the Europa League a few weeks ago. We don't like each other.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Or some others. That is going to be a themed experience that will start 2 hours prior to kickoff. And they kept coming, and now, 1 hour and a half before the game starts, we already have almost 60% of the crowd inside the stadium.
And have you noticed a difference in the type of people coming to the new stadium versus the old stadium?
That was another interesting experience for us, just because the old stadium was small, and we had over 60 or 70% of the season ticket holders, so we literally knew everyone by face. Rather than here, it's not anymore about the football fans, it's more about kids. That was a great opening for us. Women, families, mostly because of these experiences. So we came to a conclusion that the football match itself, it just turned into one of the events that they can attend this particular evening. So it's not only football anymore, it's football plus something. Altogether, a great way to spend a night in St. Petersburg. Yet we have a lot of other things to offer for those who live in the city, and I encourage everyone to come and visit. But still, yeah, the face of our average fan has changed dramatically in a good way.
And Keisha, you spoke before about your customer journey, so in the stadium and outside the stadium, and how you join all that together. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yes, for us in Valencia Club de Football, we don't like to think in digital versus like a dichotomy between online or offline. For us, actually, we think that digital is thinking about or performing better for the fan, and that means knowing the fan, and you need to know him or her online and offline. So digital is about finding the ways that technology can improve the touch points, and can improve the touch points, whereas in experience, convenience, or just getting the data. For instance, if you are implementing some technology that allows you to trace data from the turnstiles where people are coming in, this is not a digital experience for the fan, but with that, you can learn who's coming when and decide what to do about it. So for us, really the most important thing is to, in the digital era, because there are so many other things that compete with us in terms of entertainment, in terms of things to do, in terms of, we are all fighting for attention, not only for current fans, but for the newer generations. What we really try to do is to understand our customers by using technology. Then, of course, there will be some actions that will have like a physical impact and others that would be purely virtual. But at the end of the day, it's all part of the customer journey. I'll give you an example. If you have fans abroad and all the teams that want to become important or bigger brands have to have fans abroad to scale up the sponsorships and so on, these fans from abroad will not likely have the offline experience straightforward because they are not coming to the stadium every day. But, however, you reach them with content, which is digital or virtual. Maybe in social media, they get more engaged, they get in a deeper relationship with you, but eventually, this will move to an engagement phase that in many cases will end up in the, let's say, offline world. Because if they go to the e-commerce, at the end of the day, they will receive the shirt, which is physical. Or maybe they will come to Valencia and see the stadium on the tour. So basically, for us, the important thing about engagement is to engage with someone. You need to get to know that someone and be relevant for that person.
And Gonzalo,
Yes.
you've been doing a slightly more offline version of appealing to people within Braga who've come to visit tourists and things. Do you want to explain a bit about that?
Yes, offline and offline. Online, we have the social media.
Yeah.
Bit like a case of study, national case of study, because we have a city of 200,000 inhabitants, but we have, for example, on Facebook, 300,000 followers. On Instagram, 80,000 followers. On Twitter, 150,000 followers. So we get to notice that people from other clubs fans, like our social media, because we invested a lot in the club in the last few years on social media. One of our heads of social media, Diogo, is here, and he isn't famous all over the world, but his work is famous. I remember when we presented a player using Pokemon. It was talked in Sports Bible, for example. Egor did once Bart Simpson. I remember that presentation in the winter markets, for example, and things like that. Different things creates a personality. I think our social media has a personality. In the recent few months, we are developing a streaming TV that produces contents like not only broadcast the matches of the team, we broadcast the women's team that is in the Champions League for the knockout stage against Paris Saint-Germain. It's the first Portuguese team to be in that phase. We are national champions in women's football, and we broadcast in the stream TV all the matches of the women's team. youth also, B team, under 23, under 19. And we produce contents that are created for our fans, of course, a priority, but other club fans like our videos and our presentations, because they are different. It's not regular to see in other clubs, maybe, presentations using friends' song and developing a video like that. Yes, I think is one of the keys of our club.
And in terms of offline, what have you been doing within the city to engage tourists and things like that?
Yes, we have a Sporting Braga Day. It's not common in Portugal to have a club day. You have the foundation day, but not the club day. So we started 4 years ago developing a Sporting Braga Day in the center of the city, because we believe that to engage more fans to the club, we have to be close to the community. We have, besides Braga, we have 4 big teams in Portugal: Benfica, Porto, Sporting, and Braga. And to engage more fans, we believe we need to be to create a personality of proximity to the people in Braga. The event is a success. You have street food, you have music, and like I said in the beginning, not only Braga fans go to the event. People from Braga, from other clubs, other cities, go to the event. Is a city event now, not a club event.
And Felipe, with Nosh, you've been working on kind of physical activations at games and trophy presentations, which also move across to digital. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, we started this path with the Portuguese League 4 years ago. 4 or 5 years, the league didn't have no sponsor, and NOS needed to raise awareness really quick. So as an entertainment and communication company, what we looked in the market was what is the #1 entertainment business in Portugal. And for Portuguese people and people that know the worldwide players, coaches, football was the #1 sport and the #1 entertainment interest in Portugal. So it was an easy match. But when we got to the Portuguese League on the beginning, they didn't have no communication strategy, no brand strategy, no identity. So we as a team, NOS, started to build this identity that you see on the corner of Liga Portugal with the logo, the infographics on TV. So we start building in first season, second season, this communication and connection with all the Portuguese fans. On the third season, and after we already achieved more than 90% of awareness as a naming sponsor of the league, we start to go to the next step. And football is something very easy to work, because we know that the calendar starts on August and finishes on May. So it's a 10-month season going every weekend. So for a brand, it's very easy to coordinate online and offline activations. So what we studied also about the fan is that in Portugal, the #1 thing that the fan wanted was access to the games. And NOS, as a sponsor of the league and from the 18 clubs, and this is very important for a naming sponsor, we cannot go or jump on the back of the 3 major clubs or the 4 major clubs with Braga.
4.
4. And conquer these fans. We need to go to the 18 clubs with the same type of intensity, with the same type of care. So what we saw was access. Access is tickets. So it's very easy. With the digital platforms that we have today, social media, we start to put tickets every weekend on social media. And then we start to get replies and connection with the fan. Each week, we start monitoring the behavior of the fans, the football fans in Portugal, to see what type of dynamics do they like the most. And this was on the 3rd and 4th season. On the end of the 4th season calendar, we start doing, because we already had our community engaged, we start doing special activations. We start surprising customers from NOS, loyal fans of NOS, in their stadium, in their football stadium, with a money can't buy experience. And this past season, with Sporting, with who we also sponsor, we surprised a female fan that was, since she was 5 years old, a supporting loyal fan. She didn't miss a match for 90% of the matches since she was 5. And she was also a loyal customer of NOS. So on the half time, the speaker of the match went to her place and surprised her with 4 VIP tickets for the Portuguese Cup final. And that experience surprised her. She started crying in the stadium. Everybody on the Jumbotrons started looking to the experience. And we didn't communicate it before that experience. We recorded the experience, we published the experience, and then we challenged the fans saying, be aware, because the next person that can be surprised by this Mannequin Pie experience can be you. If you are a NOS customer, we will be loyal to you also and will give you more experiences. So this is the connection between the offline and online. And that experience ended with Sporting winning the Portuguese Cup final. And she was with the players in the middle of the pitch, looking to the fans, showing the Portuguese Cups to the fans. I think it's something that she will never forget. And we saw on the comments of that experience, fans from Braga, fans from Tondela, fans from Benfica, that they are rivals from Sporting, saying, why does not my team does this type of activation? So this is the trick, this is the point that we want to touch and build the community through experiences and the online and the offline mix.
And Russell, thanks for your patience on the end.
Hi.
As a federation, we've spoken about, Gonzalo spoke about streaming, and so did Felipe, and you've obviously got a community of clubs, and you're helping them out with the website development, but also iFollow. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Absolutely. We've got 72 clubs ranging from the very, very big to the very, very small, and each of those clubs does different things depending on their size and their resource when it comes to online and offline activation. The league itself doesn't have a stadium or any sort of central offline assets, but we do control the broadcast rights and the digital rights, the live streaming rights. So our big initiative over the last few years has been to claw some of those back from our broadcasters and present those under a banner called iFollow. For each one of our clubs, essentially, some of the clubs do it under their own brand, but essentially we produce live games, around 1,500 live games, which we then push out through our digital channels to fans of those clubs. It's an important revenue source for clubs. It's an important exposure and fan engagement tool, especially outside of the UK, where some of those fans of clubs will not get to a single game in a year because of where they are in the world. But for us, we've also got to manage that in the UK, where people going through the turnstiles is still the biggest source of income for all of our clubs. So we have to measure what we do with the OTT service in the UK so as not to detract from people going through the turnstiles.
And how's that working out so far? I mean, is there the balance? Because the reason we have the blackout period in the UK, which is from 2:45 to 5:15, I think, is to so people continue going to games. So have you found that it's affected yet, or are you still kind of in the infancy?
Most of the live streaming we've done in the UK has been on midweeks, so midweek Tuesday evening games or displaced fixtures, and it hasn't seemed to have had a material impact on attendances. Most of the people that have bought those live streaming passes tend to be about 25 to 40 miles outside of the stadium radius, which would suggest that people still view going to the game as the sort of premium experience, and this is a way to access the game if you can't get there for whatever reason, because the distance of the away game. Our biggest viewed and biggest sale game last year was Portsmouth versus Luton, which was the perfect storm. It was January. It was snowing. It was a Tuesday night. It was a top of the table clash in League One, and quite frankly, I don't think the Portsmouth fans wanted to travel all that way up to Luton. So that saw the biggest number of sales. We did a small experiment last year where we were able to do some League One and League Two games on a Saturday afternoon, but that did get quite a bit of a backlash from some clubs who really do hold that Saturday blackout as sacrosanct.
And do you feel like if the top division in a country, the Premier League in the UK, or in England rather, did that, do you think that would affect the lower league crowds, or is that a misnomer these days with streaming?
It's hard to say. I think one of the problems that we have is that we've got the league and its clubs have an aging audience and demographic. It's quite loyal, but it's not getting any younger. So perhaps that might be felt more sharply at the younger end of the audience, where people might not be as loyal, or they might be inclined to move to new clubs or new allegiances. But I wouldn't know. Yeah, if Man United streamed a game on Saturday afternoon, I don't know what that would do to our attendances or our streaming figures.
Okay. I think moving on to social media and content production, Igor, I believe you are the club that produces content in the most languages in the world. 17, I believe. What's your thinking behind that?
The opposite is not proved yet, so we we keep believing that, yes, we hold this unusual record. Yes, we do produce content in 17 languages, including some that may sound quite exotic, like Persian or Hebrew or Finnish or some others. And we came to this conclusion basically by experimenting with different things, because you may have seen at some top club web pages that they have some version in Indonesian, Japanese, Chinese, or something. But in their case, this is a business decision, I believe, because they have a lot of presence there, physical presence, broadcasting. For us, the situation is completely the opposite. Not only because the Russian league is not broadcasted anywhere outside of Russia, and it's not that good for us, but also because our physical presence, well, this year we're in the Champions League, so we have some sort of attention. 3 years before, we were in the Europa League, and the difference is quite easy to feel. But we have our loyal fans, not that many, and we just decided to build up this volunteer program, if you may, because we felt that we really value everyone, each fan, and that's a great tool for them, just to let them do what they want to do for the club. And I know that the question raises, how do you control them, and what if they post something wrong? It first of all turns in the way that we have a special websites, like a simplified websites in those languages, and we do not push them to post there something like every day or every 2 days. No, whenever they have time, once in a week, like a general update, like an email newsletter, if you may. But on the other hand, of course, we check them, we look at them beforehand, and then we just let them feel this connection with the club, because I believe that, okay, all the offline stadium experiences and some other things, they give you some sort of this connection feeling. But when you really get this option to work for the club and do something valuable, and when you understand that some other fans may see what you have just done in a good way, it gives another sort of emotional connection, and we're happy that we have this opportunity. And it really helps us, because if we talk about a specific case, we have a striker from Iran, Sardar Azmoun, and he's one of the most famous persons in his country. Yet, Iran, due to the different political and other reasons, has a very special digital landscape, because I believe that Facebook is blocked there, YouTube is not popular, average speed of the mobile internet is very slow, and they use Telegram as a tool, as a main tool, a messenger. So we have found a guy who speaks this language. He's in St. Petersburg, he is Russian, and we just asked him, like, let's try, let's see. And the numbers, they're really insane, because they have groups of 2-3 million people who sit at the Telegram, like a WhatsApp channel, same way it works. And we just started to invest some of his time and some of our time into that. And in terms of the reach, the numbers were really astonishing for us. Same way it works with some other blogs, but by the end of the day, we just think that we as a club have to take care the best way possible about everyone who we can see, identify, and if we have this tool, if we can invite someone to help us and to enjoy this experience, why not?
And how do you go about choosing the kind of languages that you focus on? Because obviously they're impacted by the players that you have. You just spoke about that, and you've had a lot of Brazilian players as well. What about why the other languages?
It's just about our fans, because they're there. It's a complex thing, because there are some countries where we have strong Russian communities, like Germany. Over 8 million Russians living there, and some of them are Zenit fans, so they want to do something for us. We don't mind. Finland is like our neighbor, 2 hours drive from St. Petersburg. Some people live there. Someone comes with the players, and for us, Latin America and all the Spanish-speaking countries has always been a priority. And before the presentation, I shared with you some sort of an insight that there is a gathering of the Champions League clubs happening today, and the number was unveiled that for the first time the Spanish audience on the social media have exceeded the English-speaking audience for the Champions League. which brings us to the fact that even 2 languages are not enough. And for us, as we are by definition limited with Russian, which is okay spoken by 150 million all over the world, still not Chinese, not English, still a very specific language. We just have to do that, and we're trying to find the best way possible.
Okay. And Keisha, you've got a Korean player, Lee Kang-in. How are you engaging with the Korean audience at Valencia?
Well, related to what the colleague from Zenit said, and in the case of Korea, what we have tried to do is to put a little bit of focus so that the relationship that we have with specific markets has more depth, and we learn from them. So we have put a lot of focus in Asia, and specifically in China and Korea. In the case of Korea, we have the advantage that this player has got a lot of exposure in the World Championship and so on. But again, we try to work not only with the players. Of course, with the players, you get it's like a hook that attracts a lot of people, but you have to embed into those contents, into those actions with the players, your club values. Because players come and go. And if you have an aspiration to become a brand, you have to look what is your value proposition, what do you stand for, because at the end of the day, we all play football. Or if we say, my value proposition is to win, okay. But if cheer, only one wins the championship. So apart from that, what are you? So, for instance, in the case of Kang-in, yes, we have Kang-in, but there's also a story behind Kang-in. Kang-in is a guy who came to our academy because he really loved football, he wanted to play football, his family moved there, he made the effort. He's very much loved by the local fans. I've seen in Mestalla, in our stadium, like an old lady, like a grandmother, when the guy goes to the pitch, like she is standing up and yes, cheering for the guy. So for them, it's like another Valencian, no? It's like a very different, exotic Valencian. So yes, we try to use to our advantage every attribute that we think can help us build deeper relationships with certain markets. We focus on resources. We could address many markets, but I think we want to be able to experiment a little deeper. Therefore, we want to be consistent. And then the last thing is to embed your values and embed your communication strategy in all of these, let's say, highlights of the league that are the results or the players. The brand and the club has to always be embedded on that.
Okay. And Russell, we've heard about the big Champions League level clubs, and your role is exploiting, probably exploiting is the wrong word, managing of the EFL's digital rights for a lot of clubs that are very traditional, very old school, very offline. What sort of advice do you give them to help them move into the digital age with a very slightly older, more traditional fan base?
We try to provide the same advice to all the clubs. In fact, we had a strategic session yesterday, but we have to be mindful of the fact that at the top end of the championship, those clubs are well-staffed and well-resourced, and at the bottom end of League Two, there might be one guy that's doing several things, including the commentary for the game, and he might be, writing the program as well. We try to give the same advice, the same resources, but it's really the appetite for the clubs, from the clubs, that drives that. The way that we distribute revenue to them through that channel is on a club-by-club basis. So a club like Sunderland or Leeds will do a lot better than a club like Crawley. So again, the clubs that make more money out of it tend to focus more on it because they can see the value. But we are, bit by bit, trying to bring those smaller, perhaps more traditional, more limited clubs up to a standard where they can start to see some interesting returns on that service.
And what is the process of that? You obviously said you're providing kind of training to them, and I guess they have. Some of these clubs we've seen have kind of social media channels that kind of go offline at halftime because the guys come on as a substitute and things like that. How are they receiving this information, and are they positive around it, or is it very difficult to get that information across?
No, generally they're positive. There's always some perhaps traditionalists that might not want to embrace it, but for the large part, they're all behind it. Because we take away the biggest part of it, which is filming and producing the games. They don't need to worry about that. They only need to worry about applying commentary, which we then stitch into the live stream. We give them most of the tools. Then some of the ancillary content that we suggest they create, some of them really go to town. Others struggle because of the resource. But some of them do some really creative stuff with what they've got, clubs that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
And Felipe, we spoke before about what you guys have been doing, particularly on Instagram, to activate your sponsorship.
One of the things, we already talked about the fan engagement, but as a naming sponsor of the league, our main asset also is the trophy. So 3 seasons ago, our digital team and our agencies start to think what will be the thing that the fan would like to see when your team is a champion, and live their experience inside of the pitch on the moment that the player puts up the trophy up, was something that came out really quickly. So we start building an idea to build a camera, a 360 camera, inside of the trophy. And of course, on the beginning, we were working very closely with Liga Portugal, and there's a lot of issues that came out. For instance, as you know, players, they cuss a lot when they are celebrating. And we as a brand, we also need to, and because it was in our DNA and positioning at the beginning, to get it up, all the values of responsibility, fair play. So we make sure that there was no audio coming out from that feed. But we as a company also and as a brand, we want innovation and we want technology and we want to get to the most of fans with that experience. So we needed also a media strategy. And we built a live feed banner on one of the newspapers, the sports newspapers in Portugal, where all the feed from the camera was being live to whoever wanted to see. So we have a booth with a director and with all the technology as a broadcasting team, changing views because we had cameras outside the trophy, so steady cams on the pitch to be able to do different types of looks, and inside views from the camera. The first season was a challenge because we didn't know if that worked because it was all with Wi-Fi, but we trust on our network and our Wi-Fi network, and it didn't work for 20 minutes very, very well. On those 20 minutes, we have amazing clips of players with their families looking to the trophy like amazed. So we cut those videos really quickly, and we put it online in 1 minute, 2 minutes on. Also with the club doing the validation of the content. On the second season, season that we put the camera, we said, okay, we need to improve this. How can we improve? Let's put a second camera. But because of the champagne on the trophy, and we didn't isolate very well the bases of the trophy, really quickly it just turned off. And so we had a second base to just switch it and to put it again. So this gives us also a preparation, and it's very, very curious to work with clubs that in the beginning they are very skeptic of showing this type of images. And when they see the effect and the effect that they have on communities, and we were talking that we saw in Formula 1 putting a GoPro on the bottle of champagne and suddenly it doesn't work. We already do this since the season 2016-17. If we do this in Premier League, for sure it will be like an amazing activation. And we do it on the Portuguese League. And this season, we even improved a little bit more. So we built with the university in Portugal, engineers of the university, a base built on carbon, so it can be much more steady, and we put 3 cameras on it. So we are sure that if one camera goes off, the second camera goes on. If the second camera goes off, we have the third camera that goes on. And we are having also on the digital team in the stadium, on a room just by the pitch, a newsroom that is building content, putting content live. And suddenly we have players saying, I want that clip. And then we go, okay, we are getting somewhere. Because it's not only the brand connecting to fans, it's players that want our content to use on their social media. And I think this is what makes us work on this industry, make the difference, to innovate, and it's also the mix of our brand to try to innovate the next year with a new activation that it's linked with our technology. And we are from the entertainment business, so we need to entertain people. And clubs need to also work with us and the league to help us get more through that content that people want to engage.
And Gonzalo, talking about engaging fans, there's a kind of live experience that the guys have spoken about. There's also the other end of it. There's really deep, engaging content that helps get fans invested in a brand and the history of the club. Do you want to talk a little bit about the work that you've done in engaging people in the SC Braga brand?
One of the things that was talked here a moment ago was the thing, clubs normally are very closed. Coaches don't like cameras, players more or less, they like to put the photo on Instagram, but for example in the locker room. And we had a recent example that you can succeed on pitch always surrounded by cameras. Our women's team that is in the knockout stage of the Champions League, the last stage of the Champions League, had always cameras during their 3 matches in Latvia. In the locker room, when the coach was talking to the players, in the hotel, everywhere. And they won the 3 matches without conceding even a goal. So we want to do more things like that. Hopefully we'll get to the first team of the guys. It's hard to get there, but we want to give our fans and other clubs' fans documentaries, for example. We made a documentary in 2 weeks about our participation in the first stage of the Champions League, those 3 matches. Work was done. We sent a reporter, guys for social media, a filmmaker, and in 2 weeks we produced a content, a very good content, because people today, you have Netflix, you have filmmaking industry, so you have to invest in communication. Not only a camera doing a video, people are demanding even more quality day by day. And we're trying to tell stories, different stories, our own way. Because in Portugal we have also a problem. Unfortunately, not like in England or in Germany or in Spain, our mainstream media not always can be everywhere. So if they can't be, we can. We can produce our contents. We can broadcast our matches. And today, TV, it's not so expensive as in the past years. So with a little bit of investment, you can tell our stories, engage your friends, and even engage other clubs' fans with your stories.
It's brilliant. So I think we can turn this over to the audience. If there's any questions out there for the panel. Have we got a microphone? Or did you? Oh, I think there's someone. You might want to just shout and I can repeat your question.
For the ones belonging to the club, what's the size of your digital communication team and the size of the annual budget?
So this is for the panel members who are from clubs. What is the size of your communication budget and the teams? Not sure you want to release all of that information, but Igor, do you want to go first?
Well, I understand where this question comes from, and taking that we have the biggest team in the Russian league, people always like to not complain, but compare. And they say that, oh, you got so many people, you got so many workforce. It's not, first of all, that many comparing to most of the clubs in Europe. We have around, I would say in total, 15 men working on the content, including photo, video, and everything, which is not a lot comparing to what I know they got at, for instance, Barcelona or some English clubs. But it's not an excuse or something like that, because the answer has never been in the number of hands that you have. Because I have an experience of working in a small club, and I have been alone there. I was alone, and nothing stopped me from doing pretty the same things that we're doing now as a group. And it's on this digital experience side, I would agree that we're now in the world where we have to work along with Netflix and all those companies So the creativity is always welcome, and even a single head can always turn into a creative mode. So it's some physical things, yes, they need some work for us, just because we all have 24 hours in a day, but it's not that many.
And you might be able to ask him about the budget afterwards. Kishi, do you want to answer that question?
Yes, I agree with him again that with his example of being in a small club and then in a bigger one, and the point for me the point is not really the size of the team, because this is not really about the operations; it's about the narrative. Many communication departments in clubs are really operating like press, and for that we have the press. So I think we are more in the entertainment business. Therefore, you can have a small team or a bigger team, but it's much more about content strategy, the narrative, and entertainment. In our case, we have a group under the same umbrella, everyone related to content. Yes, we have our press and communications teams who deal with the press, who deal with the press conference, does this more like traditional communication with the coach and the players, because there are certain traditions or certain limits in the world of sport. But then BCF Media, Valencia Club de Football Media, is actually all about content, and there we have video, and we have photo, and then we have social media, we have articles. Everyone is kind of a little bit, we encourage people to be multidisciplinary. But the point is not the number of people, but the planning for the whole year, irrespective of results of the pitch. The results of the pitch, yes, we manage through the coach and so on, and press conference. But if our strategy for this year is, the brand is this, we're going to do this month, we're going to do this month, we do it that way. So it's kind of, whatever your scale, have a strategy and have your processes. And of course, what is important, I'm not going to tell you the budget, but it's important to have a budget, because the fact that the content exists and is generated because you in a football team have a lot of, the players have a lot of interesting things, yes, but to register, edit, mix, whatever, to process all of that content, you need budget. You need to put it out there, because and also, I would say, and this is something that we had our centenary last year, and one important thing is many things need to happen because of history. We have a responsibility to leave record of the things, not because this coach doesn't like this or this player. No, no.
You made a video about a fan who died.
Yes.
And the chair was there on the stadium.
Yes, yes, yes.
It was a fantastic video.
And it's not, and you know, this is not.
It's not about the first team or the Champions League.
It's not about the first team or no superstar. It's one guy that around his 40s or 50s, he became blind, but he wanted still to feel the team. So until the day he died, he remained a season ticket pass holder and went to all the matches in the stadium. This is the club. This is the club. And our duty in BCF Media is to communicate that in an entertaining way.
Mm-hmm. And Gonzalo, I mean,
I don't talk about budgets.
Well, you're one of the biggest clubs in Portugal. You've told us that, one of the 4 biggest clubs. So you must have a massive budget and loads of people, right?
No,
just you.
I don't speak about budgets. I don't know the budget. What I know is that our president, Antonio Salvador, invested always a lot in communication, because he knows the value communication has. And I can say we are 12. When I say 12, people that are close to the players and the coach in the press conference, photo guy, cameraman, journalists, video makers, 12 people. And I think we managed to go to all the fires, like they say in Portugal. So I think Kishi said the most important thing, or one of the most important things in this conference, tell stories. Not only about the first team. Okay, the first team is closed. Okay, we'll go to the B team. In the recent video we made, we told the story about one of our players, William, that plays in the under-23 team, and that spent 1.5 years injured. a serious knee injury. And in one of the first matches he made as an adult, he is 19, we were always there in the first matches. When he scored the first 2 goals, Braga was losing. He entered the pitch, scored 2 goals. We were there. We told her his story, his suffering during the recuperation, during the injury. We talked to him. We told his story. Telling stories, I think, is the secret.
Can I add just one more thing? One thing about this, really quickly. Sometimes there's a tentative of try to build a content that you believe that it's going to work, just because your club demands or the league demands to do that type of content. And what you see is that the behavior and how the consumers and the fans are consuming football, it's much more different than it was 5 years ago, much more different than it was 3 years ago. So that's the type of content that you need to go get it, build it, and deliver your stories. Because if you become a tool of communication of the club, that's institutional communication. It's a different strategy. This is a brand. It's like Kishi was saying, it doesn't matter if the ball goes in or it doesn't go in. We cannot be dependent, and the brand cannot be dependent if the team A is going to be champion or no. No, we're going to celebrate the champion and the fans. It doesn't matter who's going to be the champion. Now we need to give it the best experience of celebrating the champion. And that's the role from NOS and the brands as a club need to do on a contact level.
And one more quick question. Is there?
Hi. Yeah, I would like to ask first on a club perspective and then on as a sponsor perspective. What do you use? What tools do you use? And how do you actually know your fans? How do you measure fans' preferences and behaviors?
Should we start with the non-clubs? So do you want to start with that, Russell?
We measure it in league level on a very basic premise, which is number of subscribers and a number of people viewing it, and then a sort of wider funnel below that, people that are registered on the websites to consume content. How do we measure that? We use a number of different agencies to measure everything from sentiment to quantitative scoring and things like that. We've got a range of tools. The clubs have different assets that they'll exploit to get similar or different information.
We monitorize our social media, the comments, the likes, and we try to analyze whether that video go right or wrong with less likes, for example. We've noticed recently that more long videos, the documentaries and the special reports we make going with the teams around the world had a lot of interest of our fans. Not the small videos that are traditional almost every club, but now because of that we are investing more in the documentaries, for example, because our public likes the products and the videos we're making.
We have tools that measure engagement, following, awareness, and we are always working with our agencies and with our digital team also to learn and improve. On this type of communication strategies, sometimes you make mistakes and you learn a lot with mistakes, but you don't only do it once, don't do it twice. So with the analytics, it gives you information, but it's also important to know our partners, our clubs, how do they work, how do they react, what are the topics, and there's a lot of information today. It's very, very quickly. We don't need to finish the season to learn. We will learn on a Sunday afternoon, and Monday we are applying a new strategy. So the tools are there. It's social media, there's a lot of information.
Kishi?
Well, in our case, I think the focus should not be on the tools. Of course, you need the tools because the sheer scale of and the amount of data you need the tools to process it. But for me, the point is not the tools. For me, the point is to have a data-driven culture, and then the different the depth of the data that you get depends on the layer of the funnel. So you will have the social media when you have some insights, but then you have people that log onto your system, then you have other kind of insights. You might have other people that buy in your e-commerce, or gives a like in your own platform because you have, not in the social media, but in your own app, you see who's doing that. So for me, it's about having a data-driven culture and having a different level of capacity to manage detail when the fan is closer to you in the funnel, and connect it all.
We also use all of that. And in addition, we also read comments. There is no better source of the attitude of the fans than reading through comments on the different platforms, just because it's like you have a problem and then you have thousands and millions of eyes looking at this problem, and sometimes solution is already there.
That's amazing, thank you. So this is actually a two-parter. So when we're done, James from Copper 90 is going to come up on the stage. But I'd like to thank everyone for coming. The guys, it's been amazing. Give them a big round of applause. And James, do you want to come up here?
Thank you.